Oh, g'day, Dr. Coyce here, coming to you from my closet. I'm trying to get better sleep and I can't remember what they said on social media. Was it supposed to be red or blue light? And was I supposed to stand on my head for 30 seconds while I do it? If you're scratching your head, I get it. But I'm being intentionally facetious here. If you spend too much time on social media, you will have seen the grifters with a code for these red light goggles and that magnesium supplement, all of which will guarantee you the best sleep of your life. The reality is, life is messy and sleep is important. And that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to start with a tiny, slightly embarrassing screenshot. A while back, I flipped from nights to days so I could show up for my boys. Soccer, school stuff, life stuff. I felt fine, the way shift workers often feel when we're running on adrenaline, caffeine, and purpose. Then I checked my wearable. My recovery score for the next morning was a literal skull. Not yellow, not meh, a skull. And that skull did what no lecture ever could. It made my sleep feel urgent. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Sleep isn't a luxury item you buy after you've earned it with productivity. Sleep is the operating system. And if the operating system is glitchy, everything else, your blood pressure, your hunger hormones, your mood, your focus, your injury risk, your patience with the people you love starts running on a corrupted file. So today we have for you episode 4, Sleep Basics. We're going to cover the fundamentals, what sleep is, how it's regulated, why it matters for short-term performance and long-term health, what the big cohort studies say, and a practical 80-20 sleep plan that you can start tonight. And we'll set the table for a later episode that goes on a deep dive on shift work, because that's a whole different game with different rules. But before we get started, please do me a favor. Hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells if you're enjoying the content I'm putting out. And head to my website, drcoyce.com, for more free resources. So let's strap in as we take the next step toward less bad days and more good decades. All right, let's cover a quick map of this series so far. In episodes 1 through 3, we built a 2-tier longevity blueprint. Tier 1 is the foundation. It's the highest leverage habits that help most people most of the time. Tier 2 is targeted. This is where we triage, identify the red flags, and incorporate higher intensity and more advanced tools for specific problems, or if you truly want to optimize your health. Sleep sits right in the middle of the foundation. It's a Tier 1 cornerstone. But if it's not working for you, you may need a Tier 2 solution, especially if there's something like insomnia, sleep apnea, restless legs, circadian rhythm disorders at play, or when your job and life keeps detonating your schedule. So what are our expectations for today? We are not going to do a biohacking Olympics. We're not pretending you can out-supplement a chaotic bedtime. In true overheard in the emergency department style, we're going to build a simple, repeatable system. If you take nothing else away from today's episode, take this. Your goal isn't perfect sleep. Your goal is predictable sleep. Because predictable sleep gives your brain and body a stable rhythm to coordinate hormones, metabolism, mood, and recovery. What can you take home from this segment? Treat sleep like a non-negotiable pillar of Tier 1. Then use Tier 2 tools when the basics aren't enough. Let's demystify sleep. Sleep isn't one single state. It's a structured cycle that your brain runs repeatedly through the night. Broadly speaking, you have REM sleep, or rapid eye movement sleep. This is where you have more brain activity and often results in vivid dreaming for many people. It has important roles in emotion processing and memory. Then you have non-REM sleep, or non-rapid eye movement sleep. This is where you have lighter sleep, which then moves into deeper stages, including slow wave sleep. This type of sleep is crucial for physical restoration and memory consolidation, allowing the body to repair tissues, build bone and muscle, and strengthen the immune system, all while the brain transfers and organizes memories, leading to better learning, problem solving, and stress management. It's the body's deep, restorative sleep that's vital for feeling rested and maintaining overall health. Across a typical night, you cycle through stages roughly every 90 minutes. Early in the night, you tend to get more deep non-REM sleep, and later you tend to get more REM sleep, although this is variable for every individual. But let's not get into the habit of thinking that sleep is a shutdown of your computer. It's active maintenance. In deep sleep, your brain clears metabolic waste, which supports physical restoration. In REM, your brain will integrate learning, regulate emotion, and consolidate memory. Now, here's the framework that helps people understand why sleep can feel both hard and what you can work on to make it more predictable. Two processes regulate sleep. Number one, sleep pressure. Think of it as the longer you're awake, the more pressure builds, which will ultimately make it easier for you to fall and stay asleep. And number two, circadian rhythm. I'm pretty sure most people have heard of this. It's your internal 24-hour body clock that sets your timing for sleep-wake cycles. If either one of these is out of whack, you nap late, you scroll under bright lights at midnight, you sleep in 3 hours and try to catch up later on, your brain gets mixed signals. So the core sleep question becomes, are you building enough sleep pressure? And are you giving your circadian clock clear signals? What do I want you to take home from this segment? Well, it's that sleep is a repeating, structured cycle, and it's governed by sleep pressure plus circadian timing. Now, let's talk hormones. The two characters everyone knows, but often misunderstands. The first is melatonin. It's not a sedative, it's a darkness signal. It rises in the evening as light fades, helping your body shift into night mode. Light, especially in the evening, suppresses melatonin and can delay your internal clock. The next and most often abused by social media grifters is cortisol. I feel sorry for cortisol because it gets a bad rap, but the reality is that it's not bad. It's a wake-up hormone and an energy mobilizer. It follows a daily rhythm, higher in the morning, which is sometimes called the cortisol awakening response, and lower at night. So what does this mean in real life? Your circadian rhythm and system responds to signals. The first is light. If you expose yourself to bright light early in the morning, you will have a strong daytime anchor. If you expose yourself to bright light late, you will give your internal clock a delay signal. Evening light sensitivity is surprisingly high, and even modest light can matter for some people. The next is meal timing. Late, heavy meals can collide with sleep onset for some people. Consistent meal timing supports circadian regularity. More on this later. And in typical overheard in the ER fashion, will keep it practical. Temperature. Your body needs to cool a little to initiate sleep. A cool room or cool sheets helps a lot. Activity. Moving your body during the day builds sleep pressure. Intense exercise right before bed can be a mixed bag, but depending on the person, it's where I would encourage you to think about that cortisol chart. You want to try mimic that morning cortisol bump and not give it another bump too late prior to bed. Plus, when you're exercising regularly, you will start to get that oxytocin or happy hormone response, and potentially you could be bouncing off the walls. The social schedule. Your calendar is a circadian force. Wake time, school runs, meetings, these all act like time cues. And finally, alcohol. It can feel sedating at first, but it fragments sleep later in the night and can worsen snoring and sleep quality. So here's my simple mental model. Get morning light and a consistent wake-up time. That will help you set the clock. Daytime movement and making sure you have enough awake time will build the sleep pressure. Evening dimness and a wind-down routine is permission giving to your body to switch to sleep mode. So what's my take-home for this segment? Melatonin signals darkness and cortisol supports wakefulness. And your daily inputs, light timing, exercise, and diet steer both. All right, I can hear you asking me, why should I care about sleep? Let's start with the obvious stuff. You feel within 24 hours if you're having sleep disturbance. You're more irritable, your focus and reaction times are worse, you're hungrier, and your cravings get louder. Your pain tolerance drops. Your workouts feel harder for the same amount of effort. Okay, let's zoom out. What happens when poor sleep becomes a pattern? Large-scale evidence links short sleep to higher risk of major long-term outcomes, including mortality, diabetes, hypertension, and cardiovascular disease. A major meta-analysis from Itani et al. Pooled data from over 5 million participants and found that short sleep was associated with increased risk across multiple outcomes, including increased risk for cardiovascular disease, stroke, hypertension, obesity, depression, and dyslipidemia. And for shift workers, those who are awake for more than 2 hours between 10 p.m. and 5 a.m., the stakes are even clearer. The exposure for these folks results in chronic circadian disruption and exacerbates their risk for all of those diseases we talked about. Systematic reviews and meta-analyses link shift work to vascular events, cardiometabolic risk, and long-term rotating night shift work is associated with an increased risk of type 2 diabetes. Mechanistically, there are multiple pathways at play here. Autonomic activation, inflammation, metabolic dysregulation, blood pressure changes, and behavior spillover. More caffeine, less movement, more ultra-processed convenience foods. So, sleep is not just rest, it's risk management. I want you to remember that poor sleep today costs you tomorrow's performance. And over the years, it's linked to higher cardiometabolic risk and mortality. Okay, it's time for a cohort world tour. Here's some big prospective studies across regions, populations, and sleep measures. The point isn't that every study is perfect, it's that the signal keeps showing up. First off, the UK Biobank. One study of 385,000 adults with a median of 8.5 years follow-up showed a healthy sleep score that combined chronotype, sleep duration, insomnia, snoring, and daytime sleepiness, and it was associated with lower incidence of cardiovascular disease. The authors estimated about 10% of cardiovascular disease events, MI, stroke, atrial fibrillation, angina, were contributed to poor sleep patterns. Another study utilized 18,000 participants from the UK Biobank, showing increased incidence of atherosclerosis and cardiovascular events in patients who had diabetes at baseline, with less sleep duration, 7 hours versus 10 hours. Second, the multi-ethnic study of atherosclerosis in the US, or the MESA study for short. This study enrolled a diverse community cohort and used actigraphy-based devices, the same technology as used by these wearable companies, to assess sleep variability. They found that people with the most irregular sleep duration or timing had over double the risk of incident cardiovascular disease events over 5 years. Staying in the US with the Whitehall 2 cohort. A study utilizing this cohort showed that in 10,000 participants, decreases in sleep duration over the years were associated with higher mortality. So yes, that's death from any cause. If we head over to China and assess the Kadoorie Biobank cohort, a study analyzing over 409,000 adults with 9 years follow-up showed that reduced sleep duration, including naps, was associated with increased stroke and coronary artery disease risk. Next up, the Pure cohort, which included 21 countries across the world. A study on that cohort of 116,000 adults aged 35 to 70 showed a J-shaped association. 6 to 8 hours of sleep was associated with the lowest risk, with both shorter and longer duration associated with a higher risk for cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and hypertension. They also found that daytime naps negatively affected the quality and timing of nocturnal sleep. The Nurses' Health Study 1 and 2, again in the US. These are two long-running cohorts of American nurses. They showed that rotating night shift exposure was associated with a higher risk of type 2 diabetes, which was only partially mediated by the participants' body weight, which shows that sleep really does contribute. Looking at the Nurses' Health Study 2 specific hypertension analysis of 66,000 women who were followed for 16 years showed that sleeping difficulties and shorter sleep were associated with a higher risk of incident hypertension. A meta-analysis from Sioux of over 900,000 participants showed that compared with only daytime workers, night shift workers had between 4 and 15% increased relative risk of all-cause mortality, cardiovascular disease, and cancer mortality. So what do we do with this? We take it the same way we took nutrition cohorts. We are obviously using imperfect measurements like questionnaires, although they are validated. We still see a consistent direction with the data. We know there are plausible mechanisms between risk exposure, in this case, poor sleep duration and quality, and disease incidence. Like with nutrition and diet, we see amazing consistency across continents and cohorts. Sleep duration, sleep quality, and especially sleep regularity and consistency show associations with cardiometabolic outcomes that we just cannot ignore. Now, let's zoom in on one practical framework that's gotten a lot of traction. It's the Holmes paper on 4 core circadian behaviors. Now, I have to pause and recognize my own bias here. I gave a TEDx talk in Boston that was held at Whoop World Headquarters. On that day, I recorded a podcast with Whoop's head scientist, Dr. Kristen Holmes. It was a fantastic opportunity to chat with a superstar scientist that works for a company, in my opinion, that has excellent ambition to help folks be healthier.
There's a massive difference between healthcare in Australia versus healthcare in America. People in America have an aversion to interacting with the healthcare system because they're worried about the cost. Even if you have the best insurance in the world, if you go to the emergency department, there's going to be some sort of a copay. It's just very challenging for folks. Diet, exercise, social connection. Those are the 3 things that I see people skipping over the most when they come to me in the emergency department.
The idea from this paper is simple. Instead of obsessing over dozens of micro habits, anchor your day with 4 behaviors that give your circadian system strong, consistent signals. The 4 core behaviors are: 1. Morning light. Get bright outdoor light early to anchor your body clock. 2. Consistent movement. Undertake daily activity to support sleep pressure and your body's physiology to optimize sleep. 3. Maintain a consistent eating window that doesn't drift into the late night. 4. An evening downshift. Have a plan prior to bed so that you reduce light, stimulation, and your fight or flight inputs so that you can transition into sleep. Now, Whoop has hundreds of thousands of users on its platform. Through their smartphone app, users can participate in studies conducted by the science team at Whoop. This study was the Core 4 Challenge. This included 38,000 participants matched with 38,000 controls on the Whoop platform who were not participating in the challenge. They measured sleep consistency, heart rate variability, and resting heart rate. The 4 core behaviors included daily exercise. They focused on zone 2 cardio exercise, which we talked about in an earlier episode. Time-restricted eating, so picking an 8 to 10 hour window to eat throughout the day. Keeping your last meal a good couple of hours away from bedtime. Morning light exposure, wake up and get outside, and breath work. This can be meditation, body check-ins, or simple breathing exercises. They found improvements in sleep consistency, in other words, the regularity in sleep-wake timing. Participants in this study showed improvements in cardiorespiratory fitness and parasympathetic activity independent of sleep duration. Interesting, but it kind of breaks my little emergency room doctor shift worker heart because sleep consistency is the hardest thing for me to guarantee, like many people in the community. Why does this study and its findings matter? Well, the circadian system isn't just about sleep. It coordinates metabolism, hormones, and cardiovascular physiology. When the core supportive behaviors are consistent, you're essentially giving your body a reliable schedule, and biology loves a reliable schedule. My favorite part is that this framework is portable. You can use it whether you're a parent, a student, a firefighter, or an emergency physician who sometimes eats a protein bar at 2 a.m. in the hallway. The 4 core circadian behaviors are a simple way to align your day with your biology: light, movements, meals, and an evening downshift. All right, now for the practical stuff. The goal here is not to do everything. The goal is to choose 1 or 2 moves that give you the biggest return. Think of this as your tier 1 sleep habit stack. 1. Fix your wake time for most days of the week. If you pick only one habit, pick this. Wake time anchors your body clock. 2. Get some morning outdoor light. 10 minutes if it's bright, 20 minutes if it's cloudy. Bonus points if you combine it with a walk or some other physical activity. Walk your kids to school, take your first call on the road. 3. Give your caffeine a curfew. Caffeine is a tool for wakefulness and pleasure, if you like the taste and the ritual. Just give it a cutoff time. For many people, 4 to 8 hours before sleep is a reasonable starting point. Create yourself a wind down routine that's boring on purpose. You're training your nervous system here to shift gears. Dim the lights. Pick an LED bulb that's between 200 and 500 lumens. Do something that is low stimulation, a boring puzzle, reading, and keep the sequence the same. 5. Make your sleep space a cool, dark, quiet cave. Make the room cool. Invest in some blackout shades. Find an app or a device that creates some white noise, or use a pedestal fan. Be honest about alcohol. If your sleep is fragile, treat alcohol like a sleep disruptor until proven otherwise. Honestly, while you're on this journey to better health in general, there really isn't a need to have any alcohol at all. Maybe just give it a try. Nap strategy. If you nap, keep it earlier and shorter. Think 10 to 20 minutes so you don't steal from nighttime sleep. Weekend damage control. If you sleep in, keep it modest. Huge swings can have a jet lag effect. If you do sleep in, keep the other habits the same. So here's my challenge for you. Pick 2 habits. Do them for 14 days. Track how you feel. Write it down in a journal or on a piece of paper on the fridge. See how your sleep changes. If it's not changing enough, add a 3rd or 4th habit stack. Now for tier 2. This is where we stop pretending that sleep hygiene alone fixes everything. First, you need to triage. If you have persistent insomnia, that is, difficulty falling asleep, staying asleep, or waking too early and you feel a little impaired, or you're relying on alcohol or sedatives to sleep, that's a red flag to go deeper. I would strongly recommend that you talk with your physician about this. There may be more to this story than a simple YouTube video can fix. Here are some red flags to take seriously. Loud snoring, witnessed apneas where you stop breathing, waking up gasping for air, excessive daytime sleepiness despite feeling like you have enough time in bed, restless leg symptoms, severe anxiety and depression symptoms that are tied to sleep, shift work or circadian rhythm disorder patterns, insomnia lasting more than 3 months. These are all reasons that you should engage with a physician, as you may require further assessment and specialist management. If you're in this boat, I don't want you to feel dismayed. You still have so much power and control, and you can still work on the tier 1 interventions that we talked about in the last segment, but it just may not be enough. After you've engaged with a health professional, before reaching for medications, they may even recommend some CBT-I, the shorthand for cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. This is the first line for chronic insomnia that's recommended in the major guidelines. CBT-I isn't just relaxation. It's a structured approach that typically includes stimulus control, so bed equals sleep, not doom scrolling, sleep restriction therapy, so you're asking to consolidate sleep down to the nighttime hours, cognitive work, so reduce catastrophic sleep thoughts and maladaptive associations with sleep and your sleep environment, relaxation and wind down skills. The outcomes are strong with this approach. A meta-analysis by Trower and others showed meaningful improvements in insomnia severity and sleep continuity with durability months later. CBT-I worked in improving sleep onset, reduced waking after sleep onset, total sleep time, and sleep efficiency. If access is an issue, digital CBT-I has evidence for effectiveness as well. And in many cases, it's far better than drifting into long-term medication dependence. So if you're having problems with your sleep and the tier 1 interventions are not helping, there is light at the end of the tunnel. This episode has covered the basics of sleep and given you some practical advice you can use if you don't do shift work. But being an ER doc and having experienced the pitfalls of shift work, I think that shift worker sleep deserves its own episode. But for now, here's a quick teaser. Here's how I think about it. I don't have a single schedule. I have a day system. So the first is the morning shift day. I work hard to protect my bedtime. I keep caffeine intake to earlier in the day, and I keep my wake time anchor. A swing shift day. You can often hold a normal wake time, then manage light and caffeine so you don't drift too late, ensuring that I have strong habits leading into bed to get good onset of sleep despite my bedtime being later. The night shift day. You're playing defense against circadian disruption here. Light becomes a tool. It's going to be bright at work. Try to keep it as dark on the way home as possible. My sleep environment is sacred. You have to negotiate with your partner and your family. It's their house as well, and it's their daytime as well. You gotta keep the rest of your life as consistent as possible. Exercise, meals, and have a realistic recovery plan. Okay, that's all I'm giving you for now. So what's the big picture for shift workers? Shift work isn't a moral failure. It's an exposure. Like saturated fat or air pollution. The goal is to reduce dose, reduce harm, and build a system that fits your life to mitigate the risk. In the dedicated shift work episode, we'll get specific. How you should approach scheduling, light exposure management, naps, meal timing, training, and the recovery days. All right, let's land this episode. Today, we covered sleep, and how it should be seen as a structured cycle and a biological system, not just rest. We talked about the levers, sleep pressure, and circadian timing. We identified the daily signals that help us sleep: light, hormones, temperature, activity, meals, and alcohol. We learned about why sleep matters. It helps your short-term performance for tomorrow and your long-term cardiometabolic risk over the years and decades. We talked about how the cohorts are consistent across diverse populations. We constructed a practical framework and a tier 1 habit stack that you can start now. We went through the tier 2 triage and cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, in addition to working with your physician as the cornerstone when sleep is persistently disrupted. Now the challenge. Pick one tier 2 habit that you can do most days, and pick one environment change that you can make tonight. Do that for 14 days. Track your sleep and what you do during the day to achieve it. Team, that's all we have time for today. If you enjoyed this episode or know someone who could use this episode to improve their sleep, please share it with them. In the meantime, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode. Next time, we cover everything about stress and burnout and how you can manage your fight or flight response as we chase less bad days and more good decades. See ya.